we're going to talk about some more Dracula stuff, right, Elliot? That's where we're continuing from last month.
We can jump into that, definitely. Yeah.
Right
where did we leave off last? Because we went in a lot of magical circles, I know.
Yeah. Well, we ended in a weird place where I ranted about vampires for way too long. But I think we were starting with the first films, I believe. The first stage plays maybe of Dracula.
Yeah, I think because we got into a little bit of the real Vlad Dracula, Vlad Tepes and Wallachia, and the real prince from Romania, Vlad the Impaler, that inspired everything. So I guess we were just starting to get into how Bram Stoker, basically. I think we talked a little bit about Bram Stoker, and Oscar Wilde was one of his buddies, and kind of like the genesis of how he started writing Dracula while he was working at the Lyceum Theater. That was perfect, though. It was like a stage effect. No, that's right. So he was working for Henry Irving, was a very narcissistic actor and director, world-renowned, who put on a very famous adaptation of Faust in the 1870s, 1880s, which had like 50 goblins and 50 fairies. And, this guy was very, very extravagant. And Stoker definitely based some of like Dracula and what he looked like and acted like on Irving as his kind of sometimes tyrannical, diva boss. And Ellen Terry was a famous stock company actress that was also in most of the Lyceum theaters and most of Henry Irving's plays and whatnot. And I'd say from like all these books I've read and the letters and blah, 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 that there's definitely somewhat of a Mina, Jonathan Harker, Dracula type triangle between the three of them. Because perfect cue. But so when Stoker died, and I think I know it was April 20th. I can't remember the 1914 or whatever. But Ellen Terry came and put a wreath on his grave and was very emotional. So there's definitely some triangles going on that are very similar that play into the structure of Dracula. So anyway, the interesting thing I just found out some new stuff is that George Stoker. It could be a TV show, My Brother George, about the unknown Stoker guy. It could be a comedy about how he influences all these little things. So George Stoker actually fought in, Eastern Europe in the 1860s, 1870s. And George Stoker is someone actually ended up in Romania and Transylvania. And, it's kind of obvious that George Stoker's stories of fighting there and going through Romania and Transylvania definitely interested his brother Bram as he's writing Dracula. And so Bram Stoker himself never went to Romania or Transylvania. And but again, he studied a lot of maps at Trinity College, and he was constantly studying famous vampire stories like I think it's Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. I'm sorry if I'm butchering these names, but a lot of different vampire stories, like the lesbian tale of Sappho's, I think is a Greek kind of play on vampires. So he was doing his homework, and basically then finally, 1897 is when it's published. And again, we talked a little about Lovecraft, where Lovecraft thinks that he had the help of someone named Edith Minter, I think was the name. Who was a female novelist, and Lovecraft insisted till his death that Edith really helped edit and helped kind of clean up Bram Stoker's, final drafts of Dracula.
Wow.
But so it's interesting. There's so many deep dives you can go into. But basically, it comes out in 1897, and it doesn't get great reviews. It's not a greatly received book. It's not like heralded as this classic, so to speak. And it takes definitely a long time for it to kind of pick up steam. And at the same time, I think, parallel is Georges Méliès is, basically inventing film as we know it, silent film. And he has films like The Haunted Castle in 1897, which has like the first vampire on film. So I think like the birth of silent film at the same time. And then, of course, in 1897, the Grand Guignol, which is this famous theater on Rue de Madeleine in France, known as Pig Alley. The Grand Guignol opens up, and it starts putting on the world's first horror plays.
And that was am I mistaken? Is that the Le Vampire or whatever it was? and it was a kind of erotic thing. Am I mistaken on that?
That's actually, no, you're right. Late Vampires is another film by Louis Fusillat. I always butcher his name. He's a French director, but that comes a little bit out of the Grand Guignol, where like basically Grand Guignol is the very first version of horror movie, so to speak.
Wow.
They're on a play, and it's in a 280 seated old convent, like old chapel, and it's converted. And so the Grand Guignol brings to life all these archetypal tales with the help of a psychoanalyst that helps co-write some of these, and it's from the Grand Guignol that we get all these archetypal ideas of horror movies, and like The Lighthouse by Robert Eggers. That's basically exactly almost a Grand Guignol story, that was first put on. It's very similar. So all these things are happening that I think definitely influenced that Dracula getting more and more popular as we go into the 20th century. And eventually, we have the stories of by the 1920s, it's when F.W. Murnau of the Prana Film Collective out of Germany, and he has a bunch of backers that are connected to Aleister Crowley's Ordo de Templis and the Golden Dawn, like all this crazy weird stuff. They decide to adapt the first version of Dracula without ever getting any permission from Florence Balcom Stoker, who is by this point in 1920 is a widow because Bram Stoker passed away. And so the first official version is 1922's Nosferatu by F.W. Murnau that premieres in March 1922 at the Berlin Zoological Gardens. That's a huge success, but immediately Florence Balcom's like, what the hell is going on here? You don't have my permission. And Florence Balcom Stoker, who a lot of people, a lot of different books on Dracula and Bram Stoker say she might have actually had some affairs with Oscar Wilde.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so there's so much drama. I mean, I go on and on about it. It's amazing stuff. But she sues for copyright infringement, blah, blah, blah. She wins, and the Germany courts order that every single print of Nosferatu be destroyed. And luckily, that doesn't happen, or we wouldn't have what we have today. So a couple of prints survive by being smuggled out of Germany. They make it through Europe and to the States. And it even gets to the States because I think it's 1922 or so that I believe it's May or June, because of World War I raging and all the backlash against Germany, that, the American Legion has a huge riot breaks out in Hollywood because of Nosferatu and the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. There's a lot of anti-German feelings in this country. So there's a big riot that happens at Miller's Theater in LA around that time where people were actually killed because this whole anti-German, screw Nosferatu, screw Cabinet of Dr. Caligari turned into this huge mob scene that went very, very violent very quickly. So, that's kind of like, this is all the whole start of Dracula on film. And then, of course, finally, some way through it all, Florence Balcom Stoker finally gives the rights to have a stage play adapted. And I know that there's different people involved with that in terms of the writing and the directing. But basically, that premieres, I think, by like 1924, 1925 in London. And Raymond Huntley is the first ever Dracula. And he plays the Dracula with the cape and everything you see. And Van Helsing, everything's involved in that first theatrical run. And they're creating special effects kind of as they go along to figure out how to bring Dracula to the stage. And it's really, this stage play brings a lot of fame to the novel now, and everything starts to really increase from there. And basically, twist of fate is that Raymond Huntley's playing it so much times across Europe, I think, that he gets just burnt out by it, and he doesn't want to do it anymore when it's going to the States. And luckily, at this time, there's a struggling Hungarian actor named Bela Ferenc Desko Blasko, known as Bela Lugosi, who says, I'll do the role. And so Bela Ferenc Desko Blasko, a.k.a. Bela Lugosi, who's actually a veteran of World War I. He's actually someone that hid under dead bodies to survive attacks. So he's really seen horror by this point, Bela. And he's been a traveling actor and everything you could think of. So he nails the role and gets the part from Raymond Huntley. And so then he goes and he tours around America from 1927 into 1930. He plays Dracula, I think, 225 times or something. So he becomes the definitive onstage incarnation of Dracula from Broadway to Miami to, the Midwest, of course, to Los Angeles. And it's then at that point that Universal Studios finally gets the official okay from Florence Malcolm Stoker. She sells the rights to Universal Studios, and they start to get the wheels turning to make Dracula in 1930. And the father and the son, Carl Laemmle and Carl Laemmle Jr., they want to make Dracula with Lon Chaney. And so Lon Chaney, of course, we know him as the famous Man of a Thousand Faces and this horror icon today. So at the time, 1930, he was going between basically MGM and Universal constantly doing different roles for both. But he had a contract that he wanted to play Dracula. He was already coming up with a makeup to reunite with Todd Browning, who had directed him in London After Midnight and West of Zanzibar and all these famous movies that we all know now today as silent classics. So he was actually going to have it that he was going to play both Dracula and Van Helsing. That was actually Lon Chaney's dream vision. And there's rumors that there's some sketches and there's some photos of him working out. It'd be amazing to see that stuff. But that was his plan come 1930. And then, of course, he develops bronchial problems and bronchitis. And I think then it becomes lung cancer and throat cancer. And so 1930, they're all arguing over when you're going to start Dracula, blah, blah, blah. And he's kind of, Lon Chaney played it very cool that he didn't really reveal that he was sick so much until basically the very bitter end. And so when he dies in August 1930, that's where Laemmle and them go, shit, we lost Chaney. How do we make this? And they went then between casting Conrad Veidt, who was from The Man Who Laughs, which inspired the Joker, the famous movie from the 1920s. And they're about
that's
to
a creepy ass movie, isn't it?
What happened?
The Man Who Laughs. That's really creepy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I've never seen all of it, but yeah, that's the exact inspiration.
Oh, yeah. Just
Bob Kane come up with the Joker.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I've definitely seen the images of that, and it scared the shit out of me when I so weird, man.
Yeah, there it is. You can see him. There he is. He plays Prince Gwilpane, and you could see.
Oh my gosh!
The original Bill Finger. Yeah. Those original Bill Finger comic book incarnations of the Joker are very, very based on Conrad Veidt.
Boy, that's creepy.
Yeah, very creepy stuff. I think that's 1927 is so he's in the running, and then they know that this guy Bela is doing this great job on Broadway, whatever, and but Laemmle doesn't really want to cast an unknown, so to speak, but they give him a shot and they test him to actually play Frankenstein, which are actually starting to pre-produce at the same time. So they're screen testing everybody in town for Frankenstein and for Dracula. And basically, Lugosi's just insulted. He's like, I am a major star in my country. I refuse to be a scarecrow here. I think it's his famous words that he says. And at the same time, Laemmle sees his test footage for playing Frankenstein, and he bursts out laughing, saying, this looks horrible. Lugosi looks horrible. I think you could find the test footage of Lugosi made up as the monster. It's ridiculous. So I think from there, they just realized that this guy has played it 230 times on stage. He's Dracula. And that's it. They cast Lugosi. He makes 500 a week. He wears his own cape the whole time. He refuses to wear fangs or prosthetics or anything. And, the rest is kind of history.
Wow, this does look bad, dude.
Oh wow! Look at that.
See, that's the irony. See, he actually does end up playing Frankenstein in later movies. I think it's either Ghost of Frankenstein he plays. So he does end up because he becomes, we all know from Ed Wood, the Tim Burton movie, he gets hooked on morphine in real life. So he eventually just kind of settles. So he does play Frankenstein.
Oh yeah, that's a movie there. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I got to type test in, huh?
Yeah, I did find the test. There he is. That's it. Yeah. So it's horrible. Yeah, he would be.
Wow.
There he is, right there.
Check that out.
This one there.
Couple books I saw the footage, and the other one, yeah. Sam Hamm on Twitter. I don't know. Sam Hamm was tweeting about him.
Oh yeah.
So that.
Jeez.
So we know that obviously Boris Karloff, it was the right choice.
Yeah, they lucked out there.
Yeah. So that's kind of the cliff notes on the evolution of Dracula from book to stage to screen.
So what's
Now, was Bela Lugosi the guy that was buried in his cape?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Okay, 'cause I remember Hollywood Babylon is one of my favorite books, and I remember.
Oh yeah, Kenneth Anger, absolutely.
In the coffin, and he's wearing the famous, cape and everything. And I always think to myself when I go to that cemetery, how fucking creepy it is that he's in that coffin all laid up like that with this cape on and the whole 9 yards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I didn't know all that.
So he actually, the other thing is he actually had a romance with Clara Bow too. He had a very erotic romance with the silent film star Clara Bow.
From what I heard, who didn't she have a romance with, right? No, just kidding. But yeah, the great thing about her, oh my God. Okay, so she was like the first big, I hate to say it, but she was like a hoochie because wasn't she accused of taking on a whole football team or something?
Yeah.
And I'm like, go girl, because it's like the 1920s.
Yeah, she was no joke.
Yeah, Clara Bow of all people.
Wow, I bet that room smelled really bad. 1920s, they didn't have good deodorant technology.
No, of course not. Yeah, a lot of BO there. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your favorite version of the story? Your favorite film?
Oh, that's I mean, I have so many loves. I mean, I think in terms of book adaptations, because I was like, let me go see what I could do. Could I make a version of this book? And in that, going to read the annotated version by, I think Leslie Kiplinger is his name. He does all these great annotated versions. I realized that Jim V. Hart, who wrote the Coppola one, he freaking nailed it. That, I think the Coppola Dracula James V. Hart wrote, I think that is the best adaptation of the book. But there's other parts. I mean, I love Horror of Dracula. I mean, that's just I just love that movie. I mean, it's Lee and Cushing together, and they're just they cover every production flaw, every cheesy thing, and they sell so powerfully. It's iconic imagery.
Well, I have a theory about Christopher Lee. He's my favorite Dracula. Bela Lugosi's great, but Christopher Lee is something else. And I have a theory that it's because those contacts hurt his eyes so much that he was just in constant, let's get it over with. Let's get this going. Because he couldn't see. I think he fell in a grave on top of an actress at one point. I mean, but yeah.
He didn't. It's funny. I think they're dead on, Aaron, because it's right. As it went on, he didn't playing it as much. The scripts got worse. Right. But then they would call him and say, "Oh, Christopher, you have to. We already sold the rights. The crew has to eat." And he would be blackmailed emotionally, I don't want to make these people poor, from me canceling it. So he just finally started saying, don't give me any dialogue. Yeah. And like you said, look, let's get this over with. It's going to be cheesy. And then as the 70s came on, it got more erotic, more nudity.
Yeah. And he started later in his career just doing whatever the hell he wanted. I mean, if you've ever seen The Howling 2.
Oh, dude, that's a great sequel. That's a great sequel. I love that.
It's got so much cheese on it that
I love it.
But yeah, he's hilarious in that. And did you ever hear his metal music? He did.
Yeah. I have one of the albums.
I shed blood of Saxon man. I shed the blood of the Saxon man. I shed the blood of the Saxon man. I shed the blood of the Saxon man. I shed it after death. I shed the blood of the Saxon man. I shed the blood of 4,000 Saxon men.
Yeah, pretty great. But yeah, Leah, what's your favorite Dracula?
I don't know. I feel terrible at this point. Because I would guess say, the Gary Oldman one. I don't know. I mean, I've seen most of Nosferatu, but I got sleepy because it was no word.
Yeah.
So I mean, I like all of them, I guess, but that one's the one that I think is the most cool. I didn't prepare for this part.
Oh, right. It's just talking. That's all it is. But
listening.
Lisa, what's your favorite?
I can tell you without hesitation because I just discovered it by accident the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now. It was called The Hunger. Have you seen it? The Hunger with Susan Sarandon.
David Bowie.
Okay, yeah, lesbian vampires. Need I say more?
Yeah.
I just saw it for the first time and I was floored. I was like, David Bowie's in it. David Bowie
Yeah.
comes out of the I'm like, what the hell? It
There's
has
no
everything.
bigger lesbian vampire than David Bowie.
Oh my God, right? This movie had it all. Look how excited I get just talking about it. I was like, why have I never discovered this? This movie, like legit.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I fell in love with vampire movies all over. I love the lesbian twist on it. Susan Sarandon is so sexy. Oh my God. But then you've got these weird like sex scenes, lesbian sex scenes with like monkeys killing each other. It is so freaking weird.
I'll have to rewatch that.
And that's me, a good vampire movie. That's me.
actually, yeah, it's actually Tony Scott's first movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I think
Wow.
it's definitely, I saw it when like in high school and I was kind of like, what is going on here? Like it was definitely,
Tony Scott's is Tony Scott the dude that jumped off the bridge?
yeah, he had
Yeah.
I think he had a life-threatening brain injury problem. So
Yeah.
that was it for him. But yeah, he's a genius director.
Right on.